Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Pat Gelsinger, our speaker today. Pat started his career at Intel. He was recruited to be a technician in the beginning, and then as he was working full-time, he got his bachelor's degree in EE at Santa Clara, and then he went on to get his master's degree in EE and computer science at Stanford. At age 31, he was the youngest vice president at Intel, and then he became the first CTO at Intel. In 2010, he was recruited by EMC in Boston to be the COO, and then in 2012, he was the CEO of VMware in the Bay Area. Pat and his wife, Linda, have 4 children, and today he is going to speak about his book, The Juggling Act, Bringing Balance to Your Faith, Family, and Work. Please welcome Pat Gelsinger.
Thank you, Petula. Great to be here with you today. I'll cover a little bit about my story as we go along. We'll dig into this subject of juggling a little bit. I didn't try to embarrass myself with the juggling balls, but maybe afterward I will. We'll see. And then a little bit about being a Christian, both in the workplace and in the Bay Area. And then we'll open up for Q&A and talk about whatever else you feel like. As well, so be informal and interactive. So, a little bit about my story. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, and if you've ever been to the Amish country in Pennsylvania, the ultra conservatives, the Amish, they haven't accepted any new technology since 1869, right? And then there's the Mennonites, who are like really conservative, but less so than the Amish. And then there's the Pennsylvania Dutch, and that's what I was, growing up. So, right, compared to the Amish, we were like really liberal, but by all means, very, very conservative farm community. My dad was 8th of 9 children. So, son number 1 had a farm, son number 2, right, daughter number 1, got down to my dad at number 8, and my grandfather said, we have enough farms in the family, just work with your brothers. Otherwise, I'd be a farm boy in Pennsylvania today, right? And when I came out to Intel, I knew a lot more about cow chips than computer chips at the time. So I was, at 6 days old, I was baptized with full knowledge of what I was doing in our church, became president of the youth group at 12 years old and those types of things. And I thought I was a Christian just because I was born and raised in in that environment. There was one good reason to go to church, right? That was to meet girls or impress their mothers and grandmothers, right? And, other than that, I was just rotten the other 6.5 days of the week. I ended up skipping my last year of high school. I accidentally took a scholarship exam to get a tech degree. So I ended up skipping my last year of high school, getting my associate's degree. So literally, I graduated from high school and with my tech degree in the summer of '79 at 18 years old. And Intel came recruiting. So there was sort of an industry-wide shortage of technicians. So Intel came from the West Coast to recruit and invite me on a trip to come to California. And the guy who was interviewing, Ron Smith was his name, he interviewed 12 people that day. And any of you who've done a lot of interviewing, at about number 6, you sort of lose track of John versus Joe. And about number 9, you lose track of Jane versus John, right? And I was number 12. Right, on his interview list. And this is what he wrote about me after the interview. He said, smart, aggressive, arrogant. He'll fit right in. So I got invited to come to interview with Intel. 18 years old, and I had never been on an airplane. Right, and imagine, at 18 years old, you're getting invited for a free trip to California, and they even threw in I could stay for the weekend. Right, so how long do you think it took me to decide to take the trip? About a nanosecond. Yeah, sure, right? I'm taking a free trip to California, first time on an airplane. But I promised my mom before I left, no way am I moving to California. I mean, they're crazy out there, right? Earthquakes and cults and stuff. I'm a farm boy in Pennsylvania. No problem. I'm staying here, right? No, right. But after came and interviewed with Intel, they made me a job offer. And the thing that convinced me to go to Intel more than anything else as a technician, I wanted to be the engineer on the other side of the table, telling the tech what to do. That was my whole career ambition. Right, summed up in one thing. I want to sit on that side of the table, and they had a tuition reimbursement program. So as long as I was working 30 hours a week or more and getting passing grades, they would pay for all my school. So I got my bachelor's at Santa Clara, did my master's at Stanford, was working on my PhD at Stanford, all of that paid for by Intel. And I was a poor farm boy, so this is pretty good. So I took the job with Intel, moved out here at the ripe old age of 18, and then started working full-time and going to school full-time. And, lightweight programs like Santa Clara, no problem. Graduate programs like Stanford while you're working full-time, no problem, right? PhD, so this is pretty intense, working full-time, going to school full-time. But, I loved it. The first time I ever had a computer architecture class, it was like, that's what I want to do. Right, for the rest of my life. I was one of those kids, you didn't want to be in the class with me. I had my first computer architecture class. I found out what the textbook was. Over the summer, I read the entire textbook, finished every problem in the textbook, right, and showed up on the first day of class having done the entire syllabus for computer architecture. Yeah. The professor, it was a new textbook on computer architecture, Tannenbaum's computer textbook at the time. The professor hadn't done past the second chapter yet in the class, so my notes became the notes for the class. But I was sort of manic about it in that way. I also, when I came to California, I thought I was a Christian, and I showed up, went to church on Sunday for what purpose? Meet girls and impress their mothers and grandmothers, right? It's that simple. So what did I do when I got to California? Went to church to meet girls and impress their mothers and grandmothers. So walked down the street to Santa Clara Christian Church, and sure enough, that first Sunday met Linda, who you'll meet in a little bit. I'll show a picture of her in a second. She asked me early in our relationship if I was a Christian, and my answer was, yes. I was baptized when I was 6 days old, president of the youth group, went to church every Sunday to meet girls. Of course I'm a Christian, right? As we got to know each other, sort of the church adopted me, and quickly became apparent that I was at best case a Sunday Christian, and a lot worse than that most other days of the week. And the sermon topic in February of 1980 was based on Revelation 3:15 and 16. I know your deeds, that you are neither hot nor cold. I wish you were one or the other. But since you're neither cold nor hot, but lukewarm, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. And, that verse cut me to the heart, because there I was. I like to feign Christianity on the one side, looking good. And on the other side was, living my own life. And I came to that, moment of crisis of my personal faith and said, I have to make a decision, right? And, was really challenged in that. And in February of 1980, made the decision to be hot for God, and made the decision to be a full-time Christian, and absolutely, at that point, made this, fundamental, life-changing decision. I'm going to be hot for God and live my life as a Christian in the workplace and what I do. So that's February of 1980. Just a couple of months later, so I'm a baby Christian at this point, sort of figuring out what it really means to, read the Word, be in fellowship, all the other things associated with that. And God puts on my heart, in a deep and profound way, become a minister. And I'm like, I don't want to be a minister, right? I'm loving this tech stuff, computer architecture, knocking it out of the park, right, at my job. That's the last thing I want to do. And, I just wrestled with God for months, right, about the idea of becoming a minister, right? It's like, I don't want to be like just nothing about it attracted me. So I just wrestled with God, argued with him about it as I was praying. And after doing that for a couple of months, right, just, couldn't let up in my heart and in the soul about it. And finally I said, okay, God, I give up. If this happens, and I laid in the Bible they have a story, the fleece, right? Where Gideon lays the fleece before God, right? The ground is dry, the fleece is wet. The next day, the fleece is wet, the ground is dry, and I laid a fleece before God and said, if this happens, I will go into full-time ministry. And it was just finally giving up before God. And after, laying that fleece before him, as soon as I did it, right, he came back and said, the workplace is your ministry. Right, and then, since that point in time, and, my life verse at that point, became Colossians 3:23 and 24. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. And that's become, my life view. I'm in the workplace. Whether I'm a low-level technician, a medium-level engineer, now CEO of a great software company, I'm working for the Lord Jesus Christ as my full-time CEO. It's great that I get a paycheck from VMware, and you can go online, you can check out, I make too much money as a CEO. That's really cool. But, and I have a board of directors as well. You can check out all of them online as well. But my full-time CEO is the Lord Jesus Christ. And my job, the platform, everything I'm given, right, is to be a workplace minister. Right? And there's a few who are called to vocational ministry. But all of us who claim the name of Jesus Christ are called to be full-time ministers in the workplace, in the home place, in the marketplace, in the school place, or wherever we are as Christians. We are called to be full-time ministers. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Now, also I do want to just emphasize a little bit that, being a Christian and an engineer, is often seen as contradictory. I believe in the scientific method, right? I have now 4 degrees, and absolutely, right, committed to, deep technical pursuit, data-driven, right, capabilities, and I am a full-time believer in the Word of God and in, the Christian truths that come with it. I do not believe those are in disharmony whatsoever. Areas of good debate, areas of good discussion inside of that, but the Bible is not meant as a scientific textbook. It's meant as a love story that demands faith for people to come to know Him, right? And if it was an unequivocal, immutable truth that was there that could not be denied by any scientific method, it wouldn't require faith. But God says you will take a step of faith to come into relationship with me. I believe I have a very credible, reasonable faith, with good scientific data that supports it. But the last step is always a step of faith, right? And you cannot come all the way, right, to God just based on scientific method. Cannot be done. And He wouldn't allow that to be the case. He demands that you make a step of faith. But I am absolutely confident, and I'll debate any miracle in the Bible that's talked about, any other factual science. We'll have a fun debate about that. But at the end of it, I cannot prove it. I can give you good scientific method behind it, but it requires a step of faith to fully accept and believe and live for Him. So, continuing into the juggling discussion. I was, as I mentioned, this young lady, Linda, so I started at Intel, was working, 30, 40, 70 hours a week, depending on school workloads and so on, the project I was on, I'm sure all of you work a nice 30 or 40 hours a week here at Google, right? Just crazy work schedule sometimes. So working full-time, going to school full-time, lightweight programs, Santa Clara, Stanford, et cetera. And then I met this young lady named Linda. And Linda and I, she invited me over. So this is Christmas of 1979. So she invites me to have Christmas dinner with her mom and grandmother. Remember this, meeting mothers and grandmothers? The formula's working great. So Linda with two, mom and grandma are there. They invite me over for Christmas dinner, right? Now I'm a poor orphan on the West Coast. I had neither money nor vacation to go back east for Christmas. So I had dinner with Linda and her mom and grandmother. And at the end of the evening, right, we just had a great evening together. In particular, Grandma and I hit it off great. Play this card and so on. Grandma closes the door at the end of the night and turns to Linda. On the first time she ever met me, never met her before, she turns to Linda and says, "He's the one." Yeah, and then Linda starts to describe all of my failings, which are numerous, right? All those kind of things. We weren't dating yet or anything. It was just a friendship, right? So at that point, 2 months later, Linda's mom says to her, "He's the one." We still hadn't even gone on a date. I got both generations in my favor. This is cool, right? And then we started dating a couple of months after that. But I was on the slow boat to matrimony. Right, I was going to finish my bachelor's, finish my master's, do PhD, and probably postdoc work before thinking about getting married. So I had sort of the 10-year plan, right, until matrimony, and God had a very different plan. And Linda, after dating for about a year and a half, she was diagnosed with endometriosis, disorder of the reproductive system, had surgery, one ovary removed, part of the second one removed, and the doctor said to her, "Kids now or never." We're just dating. I told her, she knew my plan. I was on the 10-year plan to matrimony, right? And she comes to me, one of our date nights, she comes to me with an armful of medical books. And if a woman ever approaches you with an armful of medical books, you're in trouble, right? And she explains to me what's going on and, what's going to happen. And the doctor says kids now or never, wrestle over that for a while, and we decide to get married. So we got married the following summer. And again, the doctor said kids, maybe never. Right, one ovary removed, part of the second one removed. When we began our family, and that part of one ovary did okay. So, this is our oldest, Elizabeth. Elizabeth is named after the mother of John the Baptist. She's our oldest. She's 31 years old now. Here's our son Josiah, is number 2, and he works at Seagate. He's in the M&A department at Seagate now, and his wife Carly, and our first granddaughter. Grandbabies are wonderful. Skip kids, go straight to grandkids, just for advice. It's much better that way. You enjoy them twice, once when they show up, once when they leave, right? It's really good, right? And then our third is Nathan. He lives in Oregon, and his wife Rachel, and our second granddaughter Alice. He's a youth minister at a church up there. And our son Micah is the last of our tribe here. And if we have time, I'll tell you a story about Micah or so as we go. But now, I'm working full-time, I'm going to school full-time, and having a family full-time. And this is what I call the juggling years. How do you make it all fit? How do you possibly deal with all the challenges that you have, all of the issues that are, pounding upon you? And, if you think about, this period of your life, with it, the normal priorities that we want to work through. I mean, you're here developing your career. How successful do you want to be in your job? Very, right? Right. And if you're good and capable, how much of the job do they want of you? As much as you give it, right? Your ego and your job are in perfect harmony. All of you, right? Work more, harder. You want to, be successful. You want to be promoted. You want to make more money. And all of those are in perfect harmony with each other, right? So, what happens at that phase is, your priorities ending up being work, family, God, and work just wants to consume it all. Right? And you want to be successful, right? Reinforce. What are the God-given priorities? God, family, work. So we live our lives almost exactly inverted to the priorities that God has set. So how do you make things fit? How do you live in this period of life, right, when you're just being pressed on all sides? Family responsibilities, school responsibilities, other personal objectives that you have. And in this period of time, I'll just, and this is sort of the topic of the book, and, most of the learnings out of that sort of came for this, 15-year period, where it's full-time work, full-time job, full-time school, full-time family, and how to make it fit. So, just a couple of things, right? And you can read more about it in the book and Q&A session. But, the first is a mission statement. I had gotten to be 31 years old. I was at that point, I had a couple of chips that I had finished. I had gotten my first patent from Intel. I'm an inventor. I mean, that was cool. You get your second patent. I'm still an inventor. You get your third one. Well, okay, I'm still an inventor, right? But written my first book. How many of you read my first book? You did? So anyway, it's a thriller. Programming the 8386. You get to the last chapter and you turn paging on. Yeah, this is exciting stuff. Yeah, to a Google audience, you guys get that. I mean, this is when segmentation and small address spaces were a problem, and the first fully flat 32-bit. I mean, this was cool stuff, man. So that was my. So I'd written my first book, my first patent. I became the youngest vice president at Intel at 31 years old. All this is cool and great, but all of a sudden it's like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? What are my priorities? What are, my objectives? And out of that came writing a mission statement. And in this period of life, I'd say just being very, very thoughtful about what you want to do with the rest of your life. Because you're being faced with too many things are demanding your time. How do you decide what you want to do. And, out of that, being very clear about what your goals are. And, I developed mine. You look at it in the book. You can look at it on my website as well. Let's just say, the three elements of my mission statement, my personal mission statement. First is my mission. I will be a Christian husband, family man, and businessman. I will use every resource God has given me to carry out his work on earth as set forth below. So that's what I want my epitaph to read, right, on my tombstone. Right? That's what I want it to be. And then are my values, right? And things like, work hard in all I do, be open to the direction of the Holy Spirit, enthusiastically approach new, those are the values. And we say, what's Pat like? That's what I want you to say, right? Personality. And then finally, specific goals. Some of my goals, make my marriage an example of that laid out in scriptures, encourage all 4 of our children into Christ, become the CEO of Intel Corporation, visit 50 countries. Right, I wrote that about being the CEO of Intel when I was 31 years old. What a precocious little brat I was, right, when I first wrote that. But audacious with some of the goals. Some can be long, some can be short. You'll talk about, physical exercise, about how we're going to use our finances and wealth and, supporting charities and so on. But my specific goals. Every year I grade our goals. Right? I do it at tax time. I'm already depressed, so it's a great time to, come back to the goals and do it. But grading myself and, how am I doing against the things I say? It also allows you, as things come up in your life, to say no. Not in my goals. No, I don't want to spend time on that. That's not consistent with who I am and what I want to be. So it helps you say no. It also helps you say yes and develop the areas that you want to be. So developing a personal mission statement or maybe a family mission statement to help guide you, right, to set the direction that you want to go and invest in and pursue those directions. So first of the Juggling Act rules is a mission statement. Second, priorities. And we talked about this God, family, work versus work, family, God. And how do you live every day? Because it's easy to sit some weekend and write your priorities, and then life hits Monday morning. And how do you keep them firmly in place? And just a few things from how I've learned to manage those over time. And trust me, a CEO job doesn't make it any easier. As you get higher in the ranks, it gets worse. Right, as you go along. One of those is, I, beginning the day, in Scripture, in the Word every day, and I set as my priority that, I started reading the Wall Street Journal, right, very early, like 21 years old, I read the Wall Street Journal every day, but I don't read the business Bible before I read God's Bible. And it's just one of those things. And maybe, before your first cup of coffee, just finding ways to put God on the throne every day and starting with him as a priority. Making sure you're in regular fellowship and church and making those clear priority decisions in your life. So putting God on that throne every day. And that's one of my priorities, and I have to live that way to keep myself balanced. He is my CEO. He is the person, right, that I want to be accountable to, right, at the end of my life. And the second priority is family. Now, how many of you find it easy to be home every night in time for your family? Right? Nobody, huh? Okay. Oh, you're lying. Okay. Now, imagine the conversations that Linda and I would have. Remember, my work objectives are exactly aligned with my ego objectives, right? I want to be successful at work. You remember how that spiral goes, right? So I'd have a conversation with Linda. So imagine she would approach me, right? And she'd say, "You haven't been home much lately." And my response would be, no, that's not really true. I've been home more the last couple of weeks than before that. No, you haven't. Yes, you have. No, you haven't. Yes, you have. Right? And soon you're just in the middle of an argument. So we started keeping score. Right? So we set up the at-home chart. And on the at-home chart, if I was home by 6:15, that was 1 point. If I was home by 5 o'clock, that was 2 points. Right? After 6:15 was 0. Weekend days were negative points. Right, if I was gone. That's the numerator, and the denominator was the number of work days. We set a goal on the at-home chart of having 70%, and my secretary produced a spreadsheet that she sent to my wife and I every month. Right? We have almost 30 years of the mean, the median, the 12-month running average, the skew, the kurtosis, right? With it, right? We sit down. Now we sit down. Right? Now we have the data. Right? Now we have the discussion on my time. And you say, you haven't been home much lately. We look at the graph and it's like, oh, you're right. I haven't been home much lately. Right? Or, right? No, I have been home more. I haven't felt like you've been home more. That's totally different. Right? But keeping score, setting goals. Right? And most of us in positions, in the tech industry and at Google, we're goal-oriented. we're going to be successful. Some days I'll be at the end of our driveway, right? He's sitting on the cell phone at 6:12, 6:13. Sorry, got to go. I'm getting a point tonight. Done, in the garage on time. I'm not going to lose a point over a minute or two of a stupid meeting, right? Right? So keeping score and keeping things in balance that way. And also things like dating our kids. One of the things I started early, every week I took one of them out for breakfast. 4 kids once a month, dating my kids, dating Linda. Twice a month we go on dates together. Twice a year we take, long weekends or trips, just the two of us. Finding ways to live that priority, right? That family is more important. I was given the opportunity to become Andy Grove's technical assistant. Now, at Intel, this was the marquee, this is like becoming Larry and Sergey's personal second in command. Right, at Intel. So it was the marquee development position in the company. 2 of the last 3 CEOs had that role, right, at Intel. So I was offered that job. I turned it down. Everybody in the company was like, what an idiot you are for turning down that job. But I knew I couldn't do that job and keep my priorities, right, of God, family, work at the time. Sometimes those decisions are hard. Right? But being clear about what your goals are, your priorities are, and then living according to them. Third tool for your journey as a juggler, mentors. Now, I was in charge, I'm 23 years old, something like that, and I was in charge of taping out the 8386. How many of you remember the 8386? A few of you, just humor me, a few of you, right? But it was a big, big deal, right? It was probably the most important chip going on in the industry at the time, and I was in charge of assembling the database of the chip to prepare it to send off to go to fab, right? That was my job, and, I was working, 20 hours a day getting the chip done, and we had a design review, right, with executive staff of Intel. So Andy Grove is in the audience, founder, Time Magazine Man of the Year, one of the most powerful people in Silicon Valley at the time. Next to him was Robert Noyce, the Nobel Prize-winning inventor of the integrated circuit. Next to him was Gordon Moore, right? Moore's Law, right? I got the gods of the industry here, and I'm giving an update on taping out the 386. And basically, I chewed them out. The computers weren't stable, they were crashing, and I'm not going to get my chip done if you don't fix these. What a precocious brat I was, right? 23-year-old, the guy, so on, but, just really, really aggressive in their face about this. A couple of days later, I'm sitting in my office working like crazy, right, on the chip and assembly and design rule checks and all that other kind of stuff. The phone rings. Who is it? I didn't want to be interrupted, and it's when phones really rang, right? They weren't in your pocket, right? And the voice comes back, Andy. Andy who? Right? And I respond, and the voice comes back, Andy Grove. I'm dweeb, and he, right, way up here, right? President, founder of the company, and I'm just. So beside myself, out of my stupor, and he starts shelling me with questions. What are you reading? What are you studying? What are your career objectives? What are your development plans? It's just, and I'm like, after a few minutes of that, I'm just, and he says, those are lousy answers. They were. I could barely talk. He says, be in my office in a week with better ones. Wow. The president and COO says to be in his office in a week, you got 2 choices, leave the country or show up, right? Pretty simple. So I showed up, right? And that began a mentoring relationship with Andy Grove that literally lasted till just a couple of years ago. Right? And the only reason I'm, in a position like I'm in today is because I've had people like Andy Grove making me better. Now, mentoring with Andy Grove, it's like going to the dentist without Novocaine, right? He's not a nice guy. Right? If you're mostly right and a little bit wrong, you're wrong, right? One time I came into his office, right? Just to let you know how blunt this guy was, right? I came into his office and I had grown a beard, right? Since the last time he had seen me. He looks at me, I tell you, he's sort of checking this out. He says, that's ugly. Shave it off. But that was Andy, just blunt, direct, and making you better. I just say for everybody in this phase of life, both keeping you accountable, helping you along the way, do you have people like an Andy Grove in your life? People who are just making you better, right, who are challenging you. And in scriptural terms, I've called it, it's, three strands, right? A Paul, a Barnabas, a Timothy, somebody who's breathing into your life, somebody who's a partner on the way, a buddy on the journey, and then somebody whose life you're breathing into as well. And, to be able to have those kind of mentoring relationships to help you in those, as you're developing and in your career and learning or along this journey, and how to keep balance and all the things that, you're off to do that you said in the mission statement, keeping you accountable against that. So, three, there's, a number of others in the book, but maybe some ideas in the Q&A time we can talk about that a bit more, but some thoughts on how to manage through the Juggling Act. Now, when I was asked to come back to be the CEO of VMware. I mean, that's a pretty good job, don't you think? Yeah, a lot worse jobs than being CEO of VMware. We're a $6 billion software company. I know that's small by Google terms, but that's in software terms, that makes us the number 5 software company in the world today. So hey, we're not bad, right at that level. We crossed the $6 billion. I got 19,000 employees now working for me. Bay Area. I mean, this is okay. But when we left the Bay Area, Linda and I were here 10 years, then we moved to Oregon, then I became president and COO at Intel in Boston, and then coming back to the Bay Area. And when we left the Bay Area 25 years ago, Linda said, we're never coming back. Right? We wanted to raise our kids in a different area, different lifestyle, et cetera. The busyness, the craziness of the Bay Area, we're never coming back, was what she said. And just as, never say never to God. Right? He has different plans. And so we're invited back to come to the Bay Area. She really struggled. Again, I was all in. We made our home. We still have a home in Oregon for, 25 years. That's what we really consider homes. The idea of coming back to the Bay Area was, okay, God, what are you up to? What do you want to do here? And this big platform, right, called being CEO. And with that, a few things about the Bay Area. It's a very geographically diverse area, very ethnically diverse area, highly affluent. You now live in the richest area on earth. Highest per capita income, Bay Area, across all the others on the earth. Innovative and influential, Google's, Amazon's, Microsoft's, VMware, right, Facebook's, et cetera. We changed the world from the Bay Area. Highly innovative and influential. But one of the lowest areas of philanthropy in the nation. Can you believe that? Some of the highest income and lowest philanthropy, right, in the world. There's if you go to the census data that show philanthropy rates, there are poor counties in Arkansas that have higher per capita giving rates than the Bay Area. It's like we're like 310 out of 348 different census zones that they have. Pitiful, and some of the lowest church areas in the nation. As well. So as I view it, my mission field now, my area of ministry is to rich, influential, miserly pagans in the Bay Area. That's my neighbors. That's your neighbors, right, as well. And out of that, I've helped to start an organization called TBC, called Transforming the Bay with Christ. And we said there's 3 things that we want to do. One is unify the Christian leadership across the Bay, right? Pastors, parachurch leaders, et cetera, to bring them into relationship with each other. Nationally known leaders in the Bay Area, Chip Ingram's, Francis Chan's, John Ortberg's, and others don't know each other. Just bring them together and say, let's get to know each other and work together. Second is amplify. Amplify what God is doing, right, through works of service. And, the church has become known for what we're against, not what we do. Right? And, Matthew 5:16 is listed here. In the same way that your light shine before others, that they might see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. It's not by our superior intellectual position, by our superior political position, right? It's by our good deeds we should glorify. We've gotten so confused as a church to lose that focus on love and good deeds, right, for it. So it's to really amplify works of service throughout the Bay. And, the church largely is seen today as one of 2 things, and particularly so in the Bay Area. It's either an evolutionary leftover that I as an intelligent being have no purpose for, or, right, it's a tool of the political right. And either one of those is not interesting to me. Right, as 95% of the Bay Area population. So how can we make the church appealing again? and then finally bringing about multiplication, expanding churches throughout the Bay to grow, expand, to become that, social influence for the long term in the Bay Area. So we've launched TBC, right? You can go look at it, tbc.city, and potentially participate, or with your church, join in working with us to help influence the Bay for Christ for the long term. So with that, I'll pause and we'll take questions on any subject at all.
My question is about, I guess, the role as a Christian in technology, and just not just in the workplace, but just in the work that I actually do. Sometimes I feel like the work that I do and the work that people work on, we focus so much on the how and the what that we forget the who and the why. And it gets kind of depressing sometimes to not see the connection between the thing that I'm actually building and how God can use that. So I was wondering if you have any advice for that.
Yeah, and I'd say, let me tell you, here, good job, thank you. I sort of set this as a sort of my personal, professional objective many years ago, right? I said, I want to work on a piece of technology that touches every human on the planet in every modality of life, right? Work, home, and play, right? And that's my objective in my career. Right, so that I might, right, both improve their lives and quality of life, right, as well as, hasten the day of Christ coming. Right, so that's my, what I'm trying to do professionally. And, if any of you have used a personal computer, any of you use that? Any use a Mac or anything like that? Okay, you've worked on a piece of my technology, right? If any of you use USB, okay, I did that, right? Did you use Wi-Fi? Okay, I worked on that. And now, right, cloud. I'd say with Google, think about the bigger objective of the work that you're in today, and always keep that in mind, because you just get down here way in the minutia of the stuff, right? So there is just a bigger purpose that we're out to change lives, improve the world, etc. Also, in the workplace, it is so easy to get so consumed by what you're doing, you lose track of the bigger picture, right? The most important thing to me, right, is, we'll get back here to, this picture, right? I started my leadership event this year, and I showed off pictures of my 2-year-old grandchildren, right, and told stories about them. Because, hey, all this stuff, the projects and so on, the lives that we touch, right? I spent the first 20 years of my career, and I taught this, relationships are more important than results, right? And it wasn't that I didn't care about other people, right? But, you were sort of generally a distraction. If you weren't helping me get my project done, you were generally a distraction. So get out of my road, right? You either help or get out of my, kind of thing, right? And over the last 10 years of my career, I start every meeting, how are you? Right? Today I had, one of the guys in my office who just got back from a trip through Europe. How was the trip? How's your family doing, and so on. And to really shift the focus, not to ever lose sight of the, you have a fiduciary responsibility to be a great employee. Not a good one, not a mediocre one, a great one, right? If we're Christians, we should absolutely be the best employees, because we're working for a much higher calling. But in that, find ways, right, to be able to, build relationships. Focus on the higher purpose and calling that we have, and find ways to be able to be salt and light, as it says in Scripture, in the everyday. How can I pray for you? What things are going on in your life that I can, really, be uniquely connecting with you and supporting? And even, I've asked that question to thousands of people. The most atheist, agnostic, other people. Nobody has ever denied me praying for their sick relatives. Never once. Can you believe that? Hey, you're an atheist. Do you don't even believe there is a God? Why will you let me pray for, right? So never once, right? It just changes the relationship that you have and the potential role that you have with your peers, and colleagues in the workplace.
Hi, just to follow up, can you elaborate on what you mean by to be a great employee, or to be, say, the best that you can be, especially in light of a lot of the discussion seems to be about how to juggle by, say, making time for family, or by considering relationships to be important.
Yep. So a couple of thoughts on that. One is, sometimes you just, and I want this to be very, every once in a while, you just got to walk home, tell your spouse, hey, for the next 30 days, I'm gone, right? The project demands it, and so on. You are just going to do what it takes to get the job done. But then the next 30 days after that, you better say, oh, this is how I'm going to keep balance as well. And if you can't keep some reasonable balance while you're being, a great employee, getting the job done, doing the projects and so on, then find a different job. Right, because you have to be able to live by your priorities and live, for the long term as well. But hey, when I'm taping out a chip when I was at Intel, now, when I'm getting ready for earnings calls now, or other big, we have VMworld coming up, 25,000 people. I can promise you, I will not be home for dinner, for a number of nights the week beforehand. But then also balance it by, okay, here's when I'm taking vacation. The first 10 years at Intel, I took no vacation. Right? Can you believe, why take vacation? I love what I'm doing. Why stop? Right? It was just great. And then Linda came to me one day and she says, you might not need vacation, but your family needs you on vacation. Oh, changed my perspective entirely. It sounds so stupid when I say it now, but that's right. And since then I take every day of vacation I'm entitled to. Right? At that point, and really making it good, right? You can be on vacation and not on vacation. Right, but really finding ways, and hey, as a CEO, it's really hard to do this now, but honey, just give me an hour or two in the morning and then I can feel good the rest of the day. Okay, so I get up early, clean out the inbox, handle the crisis and so on. Okay, now we can have a great day and we can go bike riding and all this stuff. We just, had a long 4th of July. So, part of it is, doing the job. Right. Also, when you're doing the job, one of the things as a Christian that you get to do is, you realize there's a much higher purpose. Mind, it changes your attitude and perspective on everything. And there's, does Google have any interwork politics? Any large organization does. But as a Christian, you can look past that so much more easily, right, as well. Just say, I didn't get the promotion. God be praised. I wasn't ready for it. For whatever reason may be the case. I got the promotion. God be praised, right, for it as well. And you can improve your work attitude, your team attitude so much if you take on that higher perspective, right, of what you're off to do, the lives you're off to change and so on. I remember, at one point in my career at Intel, I was so furious. I was a vice president, right? There was another vice president, Mike. He got promoted to a senior vice president before me. I mean, he was nowhere near producing what I was. I was so torqued, right? What a criminal injustice of the universe, right? That he was promoted before me, right? And in retrospect, hey, my career's done just fine, right? But being able to keep that balance to realize that, hey, I'm going to be the best employee, even if a fundamental injustice of the universe just occurred with that promotion, right? I'm just going to continue, right, to be doing my job, to never get caught up in politics, to absolutely be doing the right thing for the company, for the customer, with the highest integrity, et cetera. And that, and of course, sometimes you just got to do what it takes to get the project done as well. And that's what I mean by being a great employee. And if you're a great employee, I call it like this invisible bank account that you're making deposits into. Right? Because someday, stuff happens, bad stuff happens, but they sort of come and they look and say, oh no, she's great. She's been such a team player. She's got so many good things, right? You survive some of those bad situations because they will inevitably arise at different times.
Yeah, so Karen is asking, do you have any specific advice for women who are balancing work, family, and faith?
Yeah, unfortunately, women in technology, right, it's a terrible situation. And, it begins with lousy raw material in the sense that, 18% of incoming technical STEM, right, are females. It's just, that number got to get fixed. Right, because there's just such, right, this, it's all male-dominated, and technology is so much more so that way. So, to me, the most important things, and, we're hosting a Girls Who Code at our campus in a couple of weeks, and, those kind of things. We really just got to get those numbers just way up, right? It should be 50-50, right? Right? And we're nowhere near that at that level. So, and then, what happens is, females generally, right, because there aren't good role models, there aren't good systems to support them, micro inequities, right, inside of the environment, they generally get promoted less, they get lower raises, they don't have a good role model. Yeah, statistically, it's the way it is. So we have to fight those things very aggressively, just like any other situation. We're doing things at VMware. I'm sure Google is doing those things as well. But, it's one of those hard things. It's just going to take a long time to really turn around. And we are starting to see, right, the STEM rates into STEM fields starting to rise now. So it's an encouraging environment that we're in. And obviously companies, we have policies, and again, I'm sure that Google does as well, with regard to, often women fall out of the technical fields in the child bearing years. right? They drop out, they don't come back. How can we make that more effective for them to come back and return and participate? Job sharing, other things like that to make that more effective in that environment. Strong mentoring programs and so on. So there's a lot of things that we need to do to make it better. And obviously, for women proper, being able to, be successful in a male-dominated environment is hard. Right, and finding good mentors, people who are your champions along the way, are some of the most valuable things that can be done in that respect. But we have a long, long way to go, unfortunately. I remember I was the champion of the senior technical females at Intel. After 5 years, we made no statistical progress, none. Right, after 5 years, we started to move the needle. Right, on the program. And to me, it was so frustrating. I mean, I don't take on projects to not succeed after 5 years. I mean, I was embarrassed, right, for it. It's just slow, hard, and deeply ingrained, and takes a while to move the needle.
My question goes in regard to your mission statement. So at some point, I guess you just decided that you were taking on too many things, and so you decided to build up a mission statement that would affect your whole life. So I guess where do you get the insight to build such a mission statement?
Yeah, a couple. For me, I got to this period of sort of aimlessness in life, which sort of drove me to it. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. I wanted to be a VP. Okay, I wanted to write a book. I did that. I got a patent. It was sort of like, okay, now that I've sort of done the things that had in mind I wanted to get done, it was like this period of aimlessness. So it was really sort of a year of sojourn and wandering until I really read a few books and other things to get to that point. The way to write, to me, writing a mission statement, you can look at mine online, or in the book you can look at others. There's a few books that talk about that subject as well that might give you other models for it. Talk with your mentors about it, significant others, spouses, et cetera, very helpful to help you shape the thinking, right? And writing a mission statement, generally, write down the things that you have in mind, right? Revise it a few times and then stick it in the drawer for a couple of months. And then take it out and look at it again. Is that really who you want to be 10, 20, 30 years from now? Tear it up, do it again, and then put it in the drawer again. And then finally, about the third major revision, it's probably getting to be pretty close. And then take it to mentors and other significant influences in your life and say, is this what you think Pat should be? Does this resonate with you and who you see me being, right? As well as what you think I should aspire to be as well. And it's a hard process. It took me about a year to write, the first what I considered finished version of my mission statement. Now I think I'm on version, 6BA, I think is what I'm on, right? Or something like that. But, it hasn't changed a whole lot, right, since that first version of 31. But I've revised it sort of for the major epics of life. When we were in the major child-rearing years, right, sort of one epic of life. I did a major revision after we empty nested, because that's a very different phase of life and the role that you're in there. And I think sort of as you go into the sort of the twilight years of your career, maybe the next epic as well. But as you write it, it should be good for like the next 10 or 20 years. Right, of your life, and as the things you want to get done, and maybe some short-term agendas. I want to exercise this many days a week or stuff like that. But some also sort of saying, hey, in 10 years, where do you want your career to be? What do you want to be, and then what are you doing today to help you get there? Right, what are you doing right now to help you prepare for those next major jobs that you would want in your career in the future? And if you're not doing those things, then that's really not what you want to do. Right, you're kidding yourself. Right? If you can't start pointing it back to things that you're really underway today with.
So you mentioned several times about work and ego being very aligned. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on, rather than individual responsibility for that decision, if you have any thoughts on kind of pushing from the top of the company and changing the culture around work.
Well, a handful of thoughts there, because clearly, if I look at my job as CEO now, how successful do I want VMware to be? Very successful. But we've also been very thoughtful, and let me just, I think I have them here. These are the VMware values. Right? And also saying, these are the values. It's not just about projects that we're getting done, right? But we say execution, passion, integrity, customer, and community. And we talk a lot about that. And then the community is not just, it's not just the, the social community we're in, but also the community of our people, the employees and the families as well. So we clearly, emphasize that as part of the values of our company as well. And yeah, we got, projects to get done, we have schedules to keep and so on, but we do a lot. Right, and my role, we help to do this. We're an epic company with epic values, with epic customers, with epic products. The whole thing works pretty nicely that way. But clearly, like we have, on our campus, we hold a Halloween celebration. This last year, we had Ariana Grande as our singer for, we had, I think, 6,000 people on campus for our Halloween celebration. 4,000 of them or 5,000 kids. Right? Can you imagine 5,000 sugar-infested, crazy dressed kids running around? It was chaos, right? But again, it's reinforcing, the family, the balance. And again, I know Google does those kind of things as well. But, clearly, I got to reinforce it from the top. Otherwise, we turn it into a sweatshop. Right, as well. And, we're here for the long term to build families, communities, relationships for the long term. And a lot I do, right, as I reinforce these values, is critical to reinforce that from the top, even as bottoms-up decisions are made. And every once in a while, yep, I'm going to come to you and say, sorry, I need you to work this weekend. Right, but then I have to be able to also say, and maybe at the end of the month, you need to take a few extra days off. Right, and balance as well, and creating a culture that allows that to occur. I just had dinner last night with one of our guys, and we gave him what we call a take three. We give people the opportunity after so many years of service to take three months to go do something else. Right, and that could be nothing. And in his case, he's been bike riding. He says he does a 3-hour bike ride every day. He's lost 20 pounds, and he had just done a big vSphere release for us. And he says, I just needed a break. Right, and he was so grateful just to give him that chance to, reset everything. And we're talking about, what project he's going to do as he re-enters the company and so on. Right, so it really is, that mix of things of, working hard, being proud of what you do, passionate for the projects, but also saying, yeah, we have to keep things in balance because, my grandkids are way more important than the next earnings call for VMware.
Actually, I was wondering if you could go into more detail in that period of your life where you're trying to grow as a Christian, because you said you were like a baby Christian and then you were, working long hours, building a family, going to school. And all that.
Yeah. And it was, at that point in my life, it was just this frenetic period. Right, and I'm growing as a Christian, and trying to figure out what that was like. At the various, soon after I became a Christian, just tell you a little story. I was walking down the halls of Intel. This is, like a week after I became a Christian, and this guy comes up to me, and you can tell he's sort of checking me out, and I couldn't quite fit, didn't know him at all. And he comes up and he says, "Hi, I'm Bob. Are you Pat?" I said, "Yeah." Again, this is sort of weird, right? And he says, "God told me I should be your roommate." God's talking to you about me, right? We became roommates, for the couple of years, until Linda and I got married. And, just tell you, it was, he was just, this perfect, mature Christian, and sort of helped, lead me through some of those early phases. He was like the first, spiritual mentor I had in my life, people helping you in those. We had, after Linda and I got married, we had we've had Bible studies in our home now, for probably 25 of the last 30 years that I've been leading as well. The best way you want to mature as a Christian, right, is have to teach other people. Right, and that's what, for me, I find that to be, very challenging, right, in that respect. And, in that journey as you're going through it, good church, good leaders, good teaching, spending time in the Bible and prayer yourself, all of those things, just, are the good diet of a young Christian experience. But, in my case, Bob was, extremely critical and influential, right, in those early Christian years. And I think everybody, right, in that phase of life need that kind of influence. Right, for it as well. So, hey, I'm so grateful to be able to spend time with you. I'll be hanging around a little bit afterward, and love to chat some more. Thank you very much. God bless.